Today on the Forgiven Nutritionist podcast, I have the privilege of speaking with Kay. She's a mother who's walked a courageous and transformative journey along her son as he's navigated his mental health challenges. In this powerful conversation, Kay offers a raw and honest look at the highs and lows of supporting a loved one through the complexities of mental health. Her insights into the process are both moving and empowering. This conversation is for anyone who's ever faced the struggles of mental health as a caregiver, a loved one, or someone on their own path to healing. Here's a clip from today's show.
And I was just hearing who he used to be coming through, and it was just what I needed. It had been, it's hard on the people going through it, with the patient. So it was very stressful, and I feel like I literally exhaled for months. I'd be like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, it's really happening. He's really getting better. He's becoming his old self." And wow, it was a journey.
Hey everyone, just a quick break to show some gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. Today's episode is brought to you by Pendulum, a leader in gut health support. Did you know that our gut health can influence everything from our energy levels to our immune system? Pendulum's specialized probiotics are designed to help rebalance your gut microbiome and support a healthier you. Whether you're looking to manage blood sugars, improve digestion, or boost overall wellness, Pendulum offers clinically backed products to help you achieve those goals. Give your gut the support it deserves with Pendulum. Click the link below and use my code FORGIVEN to get 20% off your first month subscription. Kay, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I know a little bit about you. I know a little bit about your history and your story. Plus, I've also read your recent book called To Whom It May Concern, which I must say is a very good read. So now I feel like I know you and your family a little bit more. But why don't you tell my listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Wow, there's a lot to share. um, so I have grown up in Iowa, and I have a twin sister, and we were given up for adoption at birth, but we were raised together. And then when my oldest son had an allergic reaction to tree nuts and nearly died, we decided to look for our family. And so we were able to find our biological family. We found our mom, we found our dad, and then we found out that we had several siblings that we didn't even know about. And so that was um, a very exciting time, and probably more emotional than I realized that it would be. And, my family was just finding all of these new grandmas and grandpas and cousins and things like that. And so it was a real turning point for our family. And kind of during all of that time, I was finishing my degree in health education, and I had the opportunity to stay home with my kids while they were growing up, homeschooled them for a short amount of time. Got to do that. That was a great experience. I love education and I love fitness. And so in about 1996, I started a nonprofit fitness center, and I've been doing that ever since. And so we teach fitness classes. We also teach people how to get healthy, body, soul, and spirit. And so that keeps me busy every day. And I'm so fortunate because I love the things that I get to do.
That's wonderful. Yeah, like I said, I just read your book, and so it was quite an interesting journey, and I was riveted while I read it. And I know that you mentioned about finding the new aunts and uncles, and my daughter recently mentioned to me about a year ago, one of my uncles who now lives in Florida. They used to live in Chicago area, and they recently reached out to her on Facebook, and she's like, "Who is so and so?" And I said, "Oh, that's your uncle," but she's never met him because at the time when she was born, we lived in Ohio, and so they never just their paths never crossed. We never hung out with them at events or anything like that. And by that time, I believe they had already moved to Florida. So, I mean, I haven't seen him in 25 or 30 years. So it's been, quite a while. And, she's 23. So, yeah, she was surprised that she found out like that she has this whole side of the family too, that she never knew, but you definitely had a whole side of the family that you never knew about.
Right, right. And it was just as social media was becoming a new thing. And so it just really made it easy for us to all stay connected because we're also very spread out in the Midwest mostly. But yeah, it's been very helpful.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is your kind of journey with your son. And how old was your son about when this was all happening? He was still pretty young at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, he would have been about 6.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you just have the one son?
No, I have a daughter, and in fact, she just turned 43 this year. And then I have 2 boys that are 33 and 31.
Oh, goodness. So you have 4 kids altogether then?
I have 3.
Oh, just 3. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
And oh my goodness, I did not realize that your oldest was 40 something. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
right?
I've seen you in person, and I would not have guessed that you were that possible age.
I'm a grandma.
Oh goodness, I don't want to be called grandma ever. So why don't you tell us a little bit about which one of your sons were we going to be kind of talking about today? Was it your oldest
My
son?
youngest son.
Your youngest. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how old was if your youngest son was about 6 during all of this, how old was your oldest son? About
He was
12?
8.
Oh, 8. Okay. Oh, so they're pretty close in age then.
Oh, they're
They're
very
close
close.
to.
Yeah, they're 2 years apart.
Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, because is the daughter the oldest then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And she was 10 when they were born, and 10 and 12.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's great. And are they still all pretty close?
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
And do you guys all still live somewhat in the same area? I only ask because my kids, for example, one lives in California, one lives in Arizona, and I live here. So we're
Yeah.
definitely not literally close.
Yes. My daughter lives probably 5 miles from me. And then my oldest son lives in Chicago, so he's 5 hours from me.
Hmm.
And then my youngest son lives in Salt Lake City. So just he loves the opportunities of being out in Idaho, Colorado, Utah, and he loves being outdoors and being able to uh, snow ski. He loves to do rock climbing, and so yeah, I don't think we'll get him back.
That's okay. I don't think my kids are ever going to come back to the Midwest either. So that's okay.
Yeah.
I think once you find a place that you call home, that's it. There's just no going back, really.
Right, right, and it just gives us fun places to visit.
Well, and that's kind of nice that your one son you mentioned lives in Chicago, because that's really kind of where you and I had met. We met at the Chicago clinic for the Amen clinics. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how we ended up meeting there? Because you had told a story about your son. And so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we ended up at Amen Clinics in April of this year, and I had said to him because things had fallen apart for him. So do you want me to go back and start way back there,
Oh,
or
well,
what do you think?
you could just start from this part, and then
Okay.
some of the questions I asked will go back a little bit farther.
Absolutely. Sure. And so we were there in April, and so we found out a lot in April, and then there was that opportunity to come back to Amen Clinics and share about our experience with Amen Clinics and the results that we had gotten. And so I came back for that. And I like coming back to Chicago because then I get to spend time with my other son. And so it's kind of a win-win for me. But yeah, we came back or I went back in and was able to share just his story uh, with the folks there at Amen Clinics.
Yeah, and your one son, for those that don't know, at the Amen clinics they do a SPECT scan, and it's basically where they can. It's going to sound very scary to some people, but they can literally look at your brain and kind of
Right.
take a look and see what kind of activity is going on. It gives you a real good idea of what the blood flow, for example, is. If you have too much activity in one area or not enough activity in another area, and it can show like my SPECT scan, which I just did a podcast episode a couple weeks ago about. I have traumatic brain injury, so there's not going to be enough blood flow in certain areas that there should be. So there's definitely going to be less activity in those areas. So that's what the wonderful thing about a SPECT scan is. It can kind of give you a real good idea as to what's going on or why you feel certain ways or act certain ways. And it can really give you some insights.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just unbelievable the information that you walk away with.
Yeah. So why don't you share your kind of journey as to what kind of led you to even go to the Amen clinics in the first place?
Sure. Um, I had worked with a woman in 2016 who had dementia, and her family had asked me if I would work with her because her doctor had recommended it. And so I'm like, absolutely, but I've never worked with anyone with dementia. So it was a whole new experience for all of us. And when I worked with her, we basically did walking. That was kind of our cardio. And then we did strength training as we were lifting weights. And then I was just kind of working on, they ate pretty healthy, but I was just working on having them eat just a little bit healthier. And after we worked together for a period of time, I was surprised at how much she had gotten back. Like she would tell stories, and then each week I would send a letter out to her children because they were also spread out. And I would say, and this is what we did, and this is the story that she shared this week. Do you remember when that happened? And so they just loved the updates. And I was just shocked at the things that she was able to remember and just that she was getting things back for longer periods of time. And, and we were just all so surprised. And so that was kind of when I became very interested in the brain. And so remember that my degree was in health education, so I've always kind of been interested in health. But this was kind of something new and different to me. Like I had never even really considered that the brain was involved in everything that I do. And so there was this opportunity to become a licensed brain health trainer through Amen Clinics. And I was like, I love this. I love being a learner and I love learning something new. And so that was kind of how I even heard of Amen Clinics. And I was surprised that they had been around so long and I had not heard anything about it. And so that was my introduction to Amen Clinics.
So is that kind of what led you to also once you started realizing that your son kind of needed some assistance to take him there to get some additional insights?
Right. When when he was kind of falling through the cracks, and I was in Iowa and he was in Idaho, I was wondering what was going on, and it just was like the gaps in our conversation got to be bigger and longer, and I would be like, is he just really busy, or is he mad at me, or kind of like what is going on, and um, it was kind of at that point that I realized that he was really struggling. And he had come home for Thanksgiving in 2022. And I looked at him and I knew that he was struggling. And earlier that year, he had been hit by a car while he was on his bicycle. And he had broken his thumb and broken his wrist, but they hadn't thought to look at his brain. And so from that point on, he started to just kind of slip. And he called me one day and he said, I just lost my job. And I said, what? I mean, how does that even happen? And I'm like, what? I'm trying to be supportive, but I'm just wondering, like, how do you do that? And he said, I had this deadline and I just I couldn't get all the information together. And I thought, well, okay, okay. And he was married, and that relationship was struggling also. And he said, she's not able to support me in this. And so they ended up getting divorced. And I can't imagine for her what that was like. And I don't put any blame on her because he was struggling and so she was struggling. They were struggling as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they had to sell their house. And he had a friend who was an ER doctor. And he said, "You can come live in my spare room." And so I began to just reach out to him and say, like, what's going on? Like, should I get it on a plane and should I come out there? And then when he came home that Thanksgiving, I was like, this is not good. I mean, he just kind of wanted to be alone. Even, he didn't even really kind of want to be with the family. And so at that point, I was like, this is not good, but I still didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't till later when he just was kind of trying to reinvent his life, and he was going to go live with his sister in Colorado, and he was going to explore becoming an electrician. And I thought, well, that's great. That will be a fresh start for him. And and he was just kind of existing, and his personality was just a little bit different. He was kind of he's very very social, but he was kind of becoming withdrawn, and so that I knew that something was going on, but I didn't know what. And so that was when I said to him, "Hey, bud, how about coming to Chicago and getting a brain scan?" And just immediately he was like, 100%, Mom, 100%. And that was kind of how our journey started with Amen Clinics.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so wonderful that you recognized a lot of symptoms, and that you knew something was going on. And I think a lot of moms kind of feel that in their gut, and luckily
Yeah,
you kind of were already familiar with the Amen Clinic, so you knew some things already. But when you don't have that insight already, and you're just a mom and something's kind of off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. It's hard when your kid is the one that's struggling, and especially because when they're younger, depending what age they are, they can't always put into words, what is it going on, or what something may or may not feel like. Yeah, that can be hard.
yeah, it was very hard. And the thing that I kept, my takeaway from every time I watched a YouTube with Dr. Amen or the Amen Clinics is that it always left me with hope. And I was like, listen, if they can do that for this person, they can do it for my son. And and he would say, I'm I'm really struggling. And so I said to him, I had a conversation with a friend here in town who um, works with suicide prevention. And so I called him and I said, what should I be doing? I mean, I don't want to miss something. And he said, you should just make sure that, he's in a safe place where there's no weapons and no opportunities and no drugs. And he's like, and he just was, contact me anytime, I mean, I'm here to help you. And so when I reached out to him, I said to my son, I said, um, I'm just kind of curious, like, how much are you struggling? Like, do you have a plan? And he goes, well, yeah, kinda. And it was at that point where I'm like, if I don't do something, um, what's his life worth to me? What am I able to do? And it was just like Amen Clinics was my only option, the only thing I could even think of. And so yeah, that was the direction we went.
Well, that's wonderful that he was so honest with you as well, because I can tell you from my personal experience, struggling with depression and anxiety, that it's not always the case that people want to be honest,
Absolutely.
or share information. And especially when you had indicated that he was already withdrawn, and he used to be very social, and then he was very withdrawn. So again, it's so good that you recognize some of those little telltale signs that, especially when someone is not very verbal or vocal about what's really going on. Because sometimes when people have depression or anxiety, for whatever reason, they can really put a good mask on as well. And
Yes.
so, did he ever kind of share some of the real struggles that he was going through, or did he just give real general information that he was to let you know that he was struggling?
He was, I would say he was pretty general and pretty vague. And I would say that he didn't share everything that was going on, just enough. And I would ask just kind of prodding questions like, how are you doing? So we've always been a very active family, um, very much into fitness and sports and that type of thing. But he wasn't even really interested in a lot of those things. And so I just knew that something kind of wasn't right. But yeah, I literally had the conversation with myself one day, like, what's it worth to you? Have you done everything that you could do? And have you advocated for him? And what's his life worth? Because I knew that the cost to go to Amen clinics was not going to be covered by insurance. And I knew that it was going to be a little bit pricey. But it was like, I said to myself, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to do my part. And then I'm just going to, once we get the results, I'm going to leave the rest up to him. He's going to have to do his part then.
Mm-hmm.
But I drug him as far as I could.
Well, and that's so wonderful that and I'll call it a willing participant, because a lot of times when you have depression and anxiety, you don't want to do things, but you do force yourself to do certain things in the hopes that there is some kind of hope on the other end as well. So that's wonderful that he was a willing participant to try, because that's the main thing. When you do have depression and anxiety, is that, yeah, you've got to keep trying, because there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is always hope, and there are things that you can do to,
Yeah, I
if not
think
completely
one of
reverse, to dramatically improve things.
right, right. When he was, I remember specifically when we were in the hotel room and we were waiting for our appointments the next day. He was just real content to just kind of journal in his book and kind of lay down on the bed and kind of cover up with the blankets. And that was just so unlike him. It was really hard for me to watch, but I knew that now at least we were in the right place.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one of the things that my husband and I, we've been started cycling this year ourselves. And we talk about that a lot, because we try to stick off of roads. And my dad was hit by a truck. I know once, I think it might have been twice as well, when he was on his bicycle as well. And so people just don't understand that even if you hit your head on a kitchen cabinet, it still can put damage to your brain.
Yes.
It's the consistency of butter or soft jello. And it's so imperative that you protect it, with everything that you have.
Yeah, yeah. I was just talking to a 12-year-old gal today, and we were just talking about the brain and brain health, and she said, "Oh, I think I have had probably a traumatic brain injury." I said, "Well, did you ever like fall out of bed or fall out of a tree or fall off your bike?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." And so I think it's just realizing that it doesn't really take a whole lot.
Hmm. Yeah. And the inside of the skull itself is, growing up, I've always thought that it's this nice smooth skull and it's there to protect your head. But no, there's like these jagged bony edges inside of your skull that's protecting and kind
Right.
of holding your brain there. And so any kind of movement or jostling of your brain inside your skull is definitely going to damage your actual brain as well. And I just don't think people realize that, unfortunately, enough, and then when they play these contact sports too, it's like, oh my goodness, they're such young
Yes.
brains that you're putting them in front of, these sports. And I'm not saying they shouldn't play the sports, but at
Yeah.
least they should be a little more educated and
Right.
know the risks a little more first and see what
Yes.
they're actually doing first. But
Yeah. I said the same thing to my boys, you know. I said to them, I really don't want you to play football because you could get hurt. And I mean, I wasn't even thinking about the brain. I was just thinking about their bodies. And so my youngest son, he played a lot of soccer, you know, but and headers and all of those things that we just didn't know at the time. And we would probably do it differently now.
yeah. So when you guys had the SPECT scan, what were you kind of expecting before the SPECT scan? And then were the results after the SPECT scan kind of what you kind of thought, or were they totally different?
I guess, to be totally honest, I was just hoping they would find something because I felt like this was kind of my last ditch effort and I didn't know where to go from here. And so, yeah, that was kind of my hope, just that we would get an answer. And and boy, did we. You know, he said that, or they said that he had had 4 traumatic brain injuries, and the last one, where he had gotten hit by the car, was kind of the one that just kind of pulled him under.
Yeah. So once they told you that, did you guys remember him, like you mentioned, just falling out of a tree, or, you know, falling out of bed or anything when he was a kid? Did you all of a sudden remember a couple other instances yourself, or was it just the bike that was the most recent one? So that's what really.
I remember opportunities for him to definitely have traumatic brain injuries because he's an adventurer at heart, and so that it really didn't surprise me at all. The thing that I thought was interesting was he remembered in detail the 4. He was like, "Oh yeah," he said, "Oh, you know, Mom, I don't even think I told you about this one." And so he was snowboarding and kind of crashed, but then was unconscious.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, and so I was like, "Oh, I don't think I knew about that. I think I would have remembered that."
Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, and being a boy, yeah, he probably didn't want to, first of all, worry his mom or get in trouble for
Amen.
doing things, unfortunately, depending how
Yes.
old he was. But yeah, and plus, who tells their parents everything, unfortunately, right?
Yes. Right. Very funny.
How did seeing his brain affect you and your approach to his healing?
Um, I was surprised what his brain looked like because I just felt like it should be healthier. Um, and so then when you look at the scan, it looks like there's holes. And I thought, holy cow, he's got holes in his brain, but it's just where there's no blood flow.
Right.
Then once they began to explain everything to us, I was like, oh my gosh, that is his brain. That is totally his brain. Just, you know, that he might be a little bit ADD, or he might be just a little less organized, like his backpack and his bedroom and those things. And I was just like, you can tell all of that from looking at his brain. I mean, I've lived with him. You're spot on. Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming a little bit just to even think about um, where we were, but then just being able to see that, okay, yep, this lines up with his behavior, like what we've been experiencing. And now, you know, like, what's our plan of attack? What can we do about it? And in my mind, I'm thinking, is there something really that we can do? I had heard about other people's success stories, but kind of in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, I hope this works. I hope this works.
Well,
And it did.
and to your point too, and this is what I tell my clients too, but you said it spot on perfectly, because you can take them there, but he's the one that's actually going to have to do the work. Where if they tell him he should be eating these foods and stay away from these foods, he's the one that actually has to implement that. They
Yeah.
have to do the work. And I tell my clients that too. I can, share my insights. We can work through some things. You can even come up with your own game plan. But again, you are the one that's going to have to do the work to
Yeah.
choose what you want to work on or not work on. And that's fine. But just know that, what you choose to work on is really going to help your health. And so that was probably the hardest part, being the mom, is like, okay, knowing what he could do, hopefully he's going to do it.
Yeah. Yep. And he had made a soft commitment, when going into it, like, yeah, yeah, whatever they tell me. But then, when they say to a 30-year-old, no alcohol, no smoking, and then, you should just eat as healthy as you can, and you should always be asking the question, is this good for my brain? I was just thinking, oh, I hope he does it. I hope he does it. And I remember him calling me one Saturday, and this was after he'd been back home for about, I want to say about 6 weeks. And uh, he said, guess what I did today? And I said, oh gosh, I don't know. And he said, I ran 10 miles. And I'm like, wow, that's it. That's amazing. He goes, oh, just feel so good. I just feel so good. And I was just hearing who he used to be coming through, and it just was just what I needed. It had been, it's hard on the people going through it,
Mhm.
with the patient, because there's just a lot of stress and angst, and you can only do so much, and I just feel like you give it to God, and then you pick it back up, and then you give it back to God, and you pick it back up, and so every day I would be like, God, you have the power to heal him. I know that you'll take care of him. He was yours before he was ever mine. And but then the next morning I'd be saying the same thing, like, I took it back. I'm sorry. I'm trying to help. I just love this kid so much. And oh gosh. So it was very stressful. And I feel like I literally exhaled for months. I'd be like, oh, wow. Yeah, it's really happening. He's really getting better. He's becoming his old self. And wow, it was a journey.
Well, and that was going to be one of my questions too, about what kind of routines for sleep or exercise or anything like that. So it sounds like they definitely recommended some good exercise. And you guys
Yes.
said that you guys were already an active family
Yep.
prior to that. And hopefully he's slowed down a little bit of the snowboarding. But I mean, hey, running can still be dangerous because, there's
Yes.
still cars. You could get hit by cars still while you're running, just crossing the street or, oh, goodness.
Absolutely. But I would say he's just an athlete at heart. He, ran cross country in high school, and he loves the great outdoors, and he loves a good challenge, a good climbing challenge. He just did one of those, about a month ago, and so I just think he's kind of up for a good challenge, anytime, and I'm kind of that way too. Like somebody had. Oh, I know it was. I said to my kids one year, it was 2013, and I said, "Don't get me anything for Mother's Day that I have to, like clean." And so they signed all of us up, the three of us, for a half marathon. And so I trained that whole summer, and then that fall we ran a half marathon together, and it was so much fun. But boy, was it work.
Do you remember, were there any kind of supplements or anything that they recommended to help heal his brain as well?
Yeah, so they gave him a mood stabilizer, and then they recommended some supplements for him, and I said, no, we're sending these home with you, and I don't want them to sit on your counter. And he's like, no, man, I'm on them. And even to this day, I will order supplements, and check with him, like, are you getting low? Do you need anything? And he's very faithful about, this seems to be working best for me, and I tried that, and maybe that's not, working as well. And so he's on a very good regimen, and he, even when he was a little boy, he liked to cook, and so he likes to be in the kitchen, does his food prep on Sunday for the week. Yeah. So it was about on day 116 after he had had the scans in April that he was offered a job. And so he's a city planner out in Salt Lake City. And he's kind of living the dream, and he's doing what he loves to do. And I say to him, I'll, I'll call him and I'll say, "How's your brain?" And some weeks he'll say, "It's a solid 6 out of 10." And I'm like, "Ooh, I thought it might be higher than that." And he goes, "Mom, you don't have anything to worry about. You just don't have anything to worry about. It's just going really, really well." And so from where we were April 1st to where we are now, it's the change is kind of night and day. And I would just get like a funny text message, or I'll just get a picture, or he'll call me, kind of just out of the blue and go, "I love you. Just wanted to say I love you. Have a great day." And so we're there. We're getting there.
That's wonderful. It's got to warm your heart to know that, because you knew before taking him there, because like you said, you've seen that it can work, and you've heard the stories about how it can work and your brain can heal. And I just don't think, like you said, I don't think enough people realize that there are things that people can do that can really dramatically turn their life around and how they think and feel, and that the body can actually heal.
Yeah, I think we've both been surprised. So when he got his scan, just because they say, "Oh, brains kind of run in families," and so when I found my family, my biological dad was an alcoholic, and he had a lot of bad vices, and I remember saying to my youngest son, "Don't ever drink, because it'll catch up to you." And it was uh, it was just very hard um, to look at his brain, because at the same time I had my brain scanned, because I thought, well, if they do his, I want to compare. And they say that they can see dementia, decades
Mm-hmm.
before you ever have a symptom. They can see it in your brain. And I thought, if I'm here, I just like to know. Some people are like, "Oh no, I don't want to know," but I'm like, I definitely want to know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was good to see my brain, and it was good to see his brain. And the next time he's scanned, I bet his brain will look a lot more like my brain.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you had a pretty good looking brain. It sounds like you were pleasantly surprised.
I was real surprised, but like I said, I've been an exerciser my whole life, and they say the best thing you can do is blood flow to your brain,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, I was very happy. But I still find myself saying, um, "Is this good for my brain or bad for my brain?" Like every day.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think, like I said, I don't think that people think about the impact that it's going to have, or the long-term effects that the things that they do are going to have. I was 100% guilty of that,
Yeah,
and I mean, I used to start my day with a 32-ounce Coca-Cola, and then I would sometimes have a second one in the day, and I never once thought about my blood sugars, what the dyes were doing in my body. I never thought about any of that, how any of that blood sugar roller coaster was affecting my hormones, let alone my brain
everything.
health,
Yes,
and I know that not enough people think about little things like that. And I know
right.
I've referenced this before as well, where to me now I look at my health like my savings account, or like my
Yes.
401k. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I know I'm 52 now, but geez, I better really pick up the pace now. It's almost like I hadn't saved my whole life and now I'm catching up, because the
Yeah.
last couple years I really been paying attention. And so it's better that I'm starting to save now with my
Yes.
health than when I'm 85 or 95, because trying to come back then is going to be even
Yes.
harder. So,
Absolutely. 100%.
yeah.
I was like you. I used to, um, when the boys were little, I would go through Burger King in the morning and get a great big Diet Coke, which is even
Yeah.
almost worse.
Yeah.
And then I go back to get them in the afternoon and I grab another Diet Coke. And so I just kind of had this conviction like, you shouldn't be drinking that. You should find something else. And so it took me a long time. It was my sister who said, it's kind of like a toddler. You don't just take away the toy and not give them anything. And so she said, it's just like that. So when you take that pop out of your diet, what are you going to replace it with? And so I was like, that's a great idea because like just going to water can be very boring. So I would have a chai tea because I didn't drink coffee. And so I would drink a chai tea, but it took me about 2 years to stop drinking soda.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah. I did as well. Okay. Very much I did. Well, and then, I did not replace it. I finally I slowly tried to wean myself down. And then, I did finally hit a wall where I just was like a hard stop and I finished and gave up everything at that point.
Wow.
But, I will tell you that it was a rough 3 months of detox. And I tell my clients this too, where your body
Yeah.
is literally addicted to sugars or the foods that turn to sugar. And so you have to be prepared for that detox. And as long as you are, and just
Yeah.
know that you're going to kind of feel like, I don't know I just don't feel like myself today. As long as you just know that that's what you're going to go through. I mean, there's worse things in life to go through. Again, if you
Right.
do the hard stop, if you
Yes. Yes.
if you slowly
That's all
wean
part of
yourself,
it.
yeah. So how did this kind of healing kind of affect you and your whole family? It sounds like it was a blessing.
It was. I mean, for all of us, it's affected all of us. Just having him healthy again because he's just such a hub in our family. I mean, he everybody just loves watching him because he just lives life to the fullest. And so yeah, so we've all watched him. And in fact, I said to my husband, who it's interesting once you've started to kind of learn about brains that you can see things in other people. And so I said to my husband, you should really have your brain scanned. And he's like, what? No, I don't want to know. And I said, yeah, I think it would be great information, even if not for you, it'd be for your boys.
Hmm.
And so we're actually going um, back into Amen Clinics around the 1st of December. And he's going to get a brain scan and his two boys.
That's wonderful. I've been somewhat telling my husband some of the same things. And I say, if you don't want to know for yourself, I want to know what I'm in for.
Right? I want to know.
Well, because he saw what my brain kind of looks like, and which it, I've seen worse.
Yeah.
I totally have brain envy, and I fell in love with my brain, and I want it to be better, and
Yes.
I don't want it to even get worse because I know what worse could look like, and I don't
Yeah.
want it to get worse.
For sure. For sure.
So, what advice would you give to other parents who are considering seeking help for their child, whether they're 6 or whether they're 36?
Yeah. I I often hear Dr. Amen's voice in my head where he says, "How do we know if we don't look?" And and so it's just kind of the question that I ask people is, how do you know if you don't look? And I just feel like it would have been a real disservice to not look. And so that's the thing that I say to people is, I just think you should look. I mean, I have never for one moment regretted anything about it. I mean, the whole adventure has been amazing, and I just I just wish that people could understand what we went through, just the struggle that we went through, but then the success that we've been able to see on the backside of it. And it's nothing like it.
Oh, that's wonderful. And your whole story is another one of the many stories of hope. And
Right.
this, I was just telling a couple of people that I've had on my podcast before that I don't think I've had enough stories of hope. you know, um,
Yeah.
recently I did talk with a couple. One of them was a clinic outreach manager at the Amen Clinics, and she's had a tremendous struggle with depression and anxiety, but she also had a great story of hope. You know, people have
Nice.
heard me talk about my journey as well. And I just want people to realize that, yes, you're, like Dr. Amen says, you're not stuck with the brain you have. But I always
Yes.
add the caveat, unless you do nothing. Because if you
Yes.
do nothing, then you're not going to get better. It's not just going to magically fall in your lap. The same with, you know, becoming a millionaire. It's not, chances in your lifetime of it just magically falling in your lap are not going to happen.
Right.
It can, because you can play the lottery, but you still have to do something. You still have to play the
Yes.
lottery. It's not just magically going to fall in your lap.
Oh,
So, yeah, you're definitely not stuck with the brain you have. And I really want people to really get that sense of hope. And there are things that you can do. And if you want to do one thing instead of 10 things, it's still better than no things, right?
absolutely. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I wouldn't say I was skeptical, but I was kind of like, it feels too good to be true. Can it really be good again? And just to see his transformation just in this short amount of time, um, then I just believe that you're not stuck with the brain that you have. You're not.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that you can do, and they're not hard things.
Yeah, they're not. Well, I will say my saying is, there are simple things that you can do. It's not going to be easy because, again, we have to retrain our own brain to undo some of the habits that we're used to doing. And but yeah, there's so many simple and so many free things that you can do
Yeah.
as well. you know,
Yeah.
so that's great.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, at the end of every episode, I always ask my guests for their "Don't miss this moment." Kay, what would your "Don't miss this moment" be that you'd really want the listener to kind of take home if they forget everything else and remember one or two things? What would that be?
I think that we all have the opportunity to be an advocate for someone, whether it's just to um, put a smile on their face or to make a difference in their day. But I also think that um, sometimes there are big asks in our life where we have to say, am I going to step up to the plate, and am I going to do the thing that I had hoped someone might do for me? And so I think even if it seems like a huge thing to you, it could be everything that the person that you're with needs. And so I think just begin to be more of an advocate for people around us and see, I mean, our experiences now can spill over into other people's lives, and we can give them hope because, someone once gave us hope.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And what a perfect way to end our conversation for today. Okay. Thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it and sharing your fantastic story of hope.
Thank you so much, Wendy. This has just been great. I love what you do.
Brain MD nutraceuticals are high quality supplements specifically designed to support and enhance brain health. Developed by Dr. Daniel Amen and his team of experts, these supplements use carefully selected ingredients backed by scientific research to promote cognitive function, mood stability, and overall mental wellness. BrainMD's commitment to purity and efficacy assures that their supplements provide targeted nutrition for the optimal brain performance and long-term brain health. Be sure to click my link in the show notes. If you want to continue learning and hearing all things nutrition for your mind, body, and soul, click like, subscribe, or favorite me on whatever podcast platform you use, or you can find me at ForgivenNutritionist.com. This podcast was designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to achieve your health and wellness goals. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any illness or medical condition or take the place of any treatments from your current healthcare providers.